teaches us. And he goes on to say, this expression denotes the removing of those things which can be shaken as of created things, so that those things which cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, since we receive a kingdom which cannot be shaken, and that's what he's saying, things in this world can be shaken up, and at the end, most of these things will disappear. But here we receive a kingdom which cannot be shaken. His conclusion, let us show gratitude, by which we may offer to God an acceptable service with reverence and awe, because our God is a consuming fire. So this idea of holding on to that anchor of the soul in the midst of the turbulence of life, the uncertain waters, the troubled waters of life, is an image in Hebrews, because this is the one thing you can be sure of, you can count on it, because God's immutability means he doesn't change. Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, yes, and forever. He never changes. This is important, because if he could change, it would be for the good or for the worse. Would that be right? And if it could be for the better, then he's not perfect. And if it's for the worse, we don't want to think about that. He is the ultimate basis for that. So if he doesn't change, if his character never changes, it means that we can hold on to him. He's not like human relationships. We let people down, people let us down. Always do. Nevertheless, here is one that we can always turn to, because he always has benevolence for us, always seeks our highest good, which is what benevolence means. Yes, Lewis.
I was just going to comment on that movie reference you made. That's really a pagan idea, or an animist idea. When I used to go to Haiti on mission trips, and one of the things you see there is the people that are Christians have such a hope in all this poverty, but the people that were pagan, they believe the gods are trickster gods.
Mm-hmm.
If anything good happens, that they're on this sort of wheel of life,
mm-hmm.
and they're gonna get smacked down.
Mm-hmm.
The gods, and it just leads to a despair that just permeates their lives. They don't try any long-term plans. They won't plant a crop for 2 years or a year from now, or cultivate fields, because they believe if something good comes, the gods are just going to take it away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This idea of this cosmic chess match is really a pagan, not a Christian.
Yeah, it's a very pagan notion. And also, one of the things you discover, I believe that there is a basic primordial theism, a basic theism behind all religions at the end of the day. But typically, in paganism, that one God, and there's a name in every culture for the one true God. Eternity in Their Hearts by Don Richardson discusses this, that every culture has a name for the one true God, but typically people don't worship him because they see him as too remote, so they want instead to develop religious practices by which they can manipulate the gods in order to at least have an illusion of some measure of control. And sometimes they are tricksters, but they hope somehow through various mechanisms to manipulate the deities. But you see this other one, the one true God, is too remote, they don't turn to him. So, but these are deficient visions of God himself. And in my mind, are more of a picture of what the devil's like than anything else. Yeah, I think there was a. Yes.
Just, we were talking about the despair in Haiti. I just happened to flip in stations and heard an interview with Woody Allen last week, and basically talking about with cosmic accidents, life is painful, and the question was asked of him, what gets you up in the morning? How are you able to get out of bed with your view of life? And he said, well, it was Louis Armstrong recordings and paintings by Jackson Pollock. I can't wait to think, what an awful life view. It isn't just the people in Haiti who got that.
No, it's not. It's just a different deal. Only he just doesn't think the gods are there. He just thinks that life itself is a bad joke. But for him, what does he do? It's short-term little pleasures, it's little diversions, little distractions like paintings and music. Yeah, he basically, and that's the idea. And he's honest enough. I appreciate at least his honesty enough to do that. Robert Orr and I were talking about an interview which occurred years ago when he used to have a television show, and one of his guests was Billy Graham. So here's Woody Allen bringing on Billy Graham to interview him, and it was a very interesting interview. First thing he asked him was, what's your favorite commandment? And it goes from there. You can imagine where that goes. But it was a very interesting moment, very significant, and I think it was a real moment when effectively Billy Graham said, he says, have you seen any of my pictures? He hasn't seen, but I'd be glad to go through. He says, I'll go to one of your meetings if you see one of my films. And would that he had done that. Billy Graham says, he says, I'll do it. He says, you got a deal. In fact, we'll compare our calendars after the show. And I'll tell you, and I'll see if one of your movies. Never evidently happened. But the fact is that here, an answer was there. But he wanted to laugh the thing off. That's why it's interesting in his films. You discover a progression from a fundamental irony, ironic humor, and a playfulness about life, though always dealing with the motifs of life, of death, of love, of God. He couldn't get away from them, but he did that in a fairly humorous way. But though he was an agnostic, he moved from there into a hard-boiled atheist as time went by. I think that what we can do is eventually we can settle things ourselves, and that window of vulnerability or openness begins to be closed, and then what ensues is bitterness and distraction. And so what's interesting is Woody Allen's later films stopped dealing with those themes about love and of God and death and dealt instead with randomness and chance. It's very significant. Crimes and Misdemeanors, for example, illustrates the idea of a man who gets away with murder and at first is filled with pain and grief and fearing that what if God does exist? And if he does exist, then I'm in serious trouble. But if he doesn't exist, life's like a cesspool. It makes no sense. It's a moral cesspool. Another film he does, which is based upon also the idea of Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, because that's what that film was really based upon. A later film he did called Match Point. And by that time, the guy's even reading, this is in London, the guy's even reading Crime and Punishment. He's a little not subtle there. But the point here is the guy gets away with murder again. Only this time, it's not even an issue of moral wrestling. It's just an idea of the match point. It's just the luck of the draw. In this case, it's the tape on top of the tennis net. And the ball, and you see it at the beginning of the film, this ball in slow motion just touches the tape, and that could make the difference between the match point, one way or the other. It's just all a crapshoot. And so he loses even that, just a bunch of absurdities.
Yet he still finds his inspiration and creativity, distorted as it is. It's still a reflection of the creation.
Yeah, he cannot eliminate the image of God. Therefore, he's got to find some kind of hope, some kind of short-term hope. And for him, it's jazz, it's art, it's filmmaking, and so forth.
Still a reflection of God's reality.
Yeah, he cannot eradicate that from his own nature. Yeah, we'll close with this.
I had shared that interview on YouTube with another friend of mine. He made an interesting observation about the early part of that interview, where Woody Allen is very telling. He jokes with Billy Graham about the fact, why would I want to believe in somebody who made me look like this? Mm-hmm. And, you know, there is a truth to it. There is an early resentment of God.
Sure.
For who he is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great teaching. We've got a lot of prayer needs today with some very sick